Democrats have issued a 93-page report in the last couple of days focused on Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito. And what they found about Clarence Thomas and some more undisclosed trips are going to make your hair stand on end. They said, and I quote, the number, value, and extravagance of the gifts accepted by Clarence Thomas has no comparison in modern American history. I didn't write that sentence. I wished I had, but it does summarize those 93 pages, supported by over 800 pages of supporting information, documents, receipts, and chits obtained by the primary benefactor of Clarence Thomas, Harlan Crow, MAGA billionaire, Republican fundraiser, and Adolf Hitler memorabilia collector.
Hey, everybody. Guess who we're talking about tonight? One of my favorite topics. And this wasn't supposed to be tonight's podcast. It was supposed to be the covering of the House of Representatives dog and pony show electing a new House Speaker. Unfortunately, MAGA Mike did make it back in by the thinnest of margins, literally the thinnest in history of the House of Representatives by one vote. But let's not go there. Let's talk about our friend, our friendly neighborhood judge, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. So not to just say that he's the only one out there. We can bring Alito into this conversation very easily. We could bring in old Justice Scalise, but we're not going to talk about those tonight. We're going to talk about Mr. Thomas. After that opening montage by my friends there at Midas Touch, Michael Popak put it quite well that he wished he had come up with the line that they were talking about and the magnitude of the gifts and the compensation off books that our Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has taken, and the fact that he has been involved in so many cases where he refused to recuse himself when it came to hearing cases in front of the court that he remained involved in and placed judgment on that were involving his wife's businesses. Mr. Thomas claims that him and his wife don't talk. Well, I've been married a few years. I say the same thing in public, but my wife and I both know what we talk about. We talk about just about everything. She's not a stranger to anything I do, nor am I a stranger to anything she does, and that's the way I believe most marriages are. So I digress back out of that, though. I'm not going to judge him for that. The report, an investigation of the ethics challenges at the Supreme Court, just the title alone is kind of spooky. When you stop and think that the top courts, the top judges, the people that we go to make the final ruling don't have ethics. Now, I'm going to include, just down below here, I'm going to include a link to that report. It is rather lengthy. It's well over 300 pages with 800 pages of supporting evidence. And there's no way to bring all of it into light here tonight. So we're going to be talking about an area that I made a hobby out of for the last day or so, and that was in regards to Justice Thomas. And again, I don't want to just say that he's the only one. I'm not trying to say he's the only thing that's wrong with that court. I told you last night there were a lot of other things wrong, and it starts at the top. And I've always believed that. If there's a problem in the pack, it starts with the leader. Section V of this report, and I'm going to be putting up some B-rolls here for you to read and see, and I'll let you read along with me, about Justice Thomas's list of gifts that they were able to at least cover for now, and they know there's more. They're just looking for the rest of the receipts, and a lot of the lack of information is due to Judge Thomas's failure to work with the reporting people and with the committee, with the Senate, his downright refusal to get involved, actually. So it starts out here where if you're following along and you're looking in the report, this report is lengthy. I'm going to read from some of the notes of it. So you've got subsection V, misconduct by the Supreme Court justices in accepting and failing to disclose extravagant gifts. Now, I'll remind you, this went on for 4 decades with Clarence Thomas alone. Justice Scalia, before that, he's kind of like the guy that kind of set the standard for doing this kind of thing, okay? It starts out with him failing to disclose millions of dollars in gifts and items of value, okay? Him accepting and failing to report gifts of luxury travel worth millions of dollars. And we're talking about yacht trips on Harlan Crow, the yacht, and the name of the yacht, it slips me right now. I'll think of it while we're talking here. But he's done everything from tour the Greek islands to touring in the Cape Cod and in Florida and along the East Coast. So that's a lot, an area. So you can imagine the size of the super yacht that we're talking about. I'll try and get a picture of Harlan Crow's super yacht, see if I can include it in here too. Okay. But then it goes on. The third item is Justice Thomas's decision to stop disclosing gifts of transportation and lodging as required by law. That came out started about 4 years ago, when he kept saying, he didn't know that was supposed to be reported, although he reported it on his income tax, but he just didn't report it in the gifts and amenities that he was receiving to the Supreme Court and to the Senate. So take that with what you want with it. He knew enough to tell the IRS about it, but he didn't want to tell us about it. Okay. So, and to follow up on that, like I said, it was about 4 years ago. He stopped disclosing that. He just didn't bother to put anything more in there about that he was getting gifts, and that he just wasn't going to report it anymore. He was just going to let it go. So the gifts that we know about were before that, or anything that's come up within the last year where the Senate's investigative hand was able to get out and get information. They also go on to talk about Judge Thomas's failure to report the sale of his Georgia properties, multiple properties, to billionaire Harlan Crow again. Harlan Crow is his benefactor. Harlan Crow is behind billions of dollars and in what goes to the Republican Party, and millions of dollars of what goes to Justice Thomas. So the backstory behind the properties down in Georgia was that it was reported to the IRS on his capital gains disclosures, and he indicated that he took a loss on that sale, but the price of that sale has yet to be disclosed. And there were 4 properties down in Georgia, and one of the properties, ironically, Justice Thomas's mother still lives in, and Harlan Crow has spent tens of thousands of dollars renovating and remodeling that facility for her, and she lives there rent-free. That's a nice little gift. I wish I could give my mother that, or could have given it to her when she was alive. I would have done that in a heartbeat, but I would have had to report it, because guys like me, when the law comes looking for you, guys like Clarence Thomas, they kind of let you go because you're at the top of the heap of Supreme Court, and you can kick up a fuss like a schoolyard bully and not want to agree. But guys like you and me, people like you and me, we get thrown in jail on the first argument. But I digress. Justice Thomas failed to report his wife's income from the Heritage Foundation. Who's the Heritage Foundation, you're asking? If you don't already know, Harlan Crow. Yeah, he's behind that whole thing. The Heritage Foundation, Harlan Crow is a member of it, and there's a gentleman that leads it. And again, I'll try and include it down here in a link. I'll leave that in there for you. He's another benefactor of Mr. Thomas's. The Heritage Foundation is actually run by him, and as most of you, if you were listening during the election campaign cycle, the Heritage Foundation was heavily behind the president-elect and heavily financed him and was very instrumental in Project 2025, which everybody denied knowing about until after he won the election. And then, yeah, I know what you're talking about now. So that's the Heritage Foundation. Justice Thomas failed to report his forgiven RV loan. Last night I made a mention when I was talking about Chief Justice Roberts and his forgiving the investigation into Clarence Thomas for the RV, which I found out tonight was worth $426,000 change. The in change would probably keep me alive for a few weeks, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he was given that bus. It was financed for him. He had the payments on that, but I'm not sure how many payments he made, if he made any, but that loan was eventually forgiven by Harlan Crow. That's a big gift all in itself. That's an annual salary, an excess of an annual salary for Clarence Thomas sitting at the Supreme Court level. Justice also failed to report the tuition payments provided to what I thought was his grandson, his grandnephew, who he raised as a son. My apologies for my incorrect statement last night. It is his grandnephew, who he raised as a son, and he had that type of a relationship with him. And the tune of those tuition payments for a private boarding school in Georgia were $6,000 a month. You know, I don't remember my school costing me that much when I was a kid, you know, but private boarding schools for the privileged. Okay. The report goes on to discuss Justice Thomas's misconduct and misstate the law and defy the logic of what he calls his defense. He misinterprets the law, which I find it hard for a Supreme Court justice to accidentally misinterpret the law. I mean, really, folks, we're talking the guy that's supposed to be at the top of the pile interpreting for us, we the people, to keep our country running straight and on the narrow, and he just misinterpreted the law. And he just misinterpreted when he stopped making his disclosures. And he just misinterpreted the fact that it was okay to tell the IRS, but didn't feel the need to tell the Senate. And now, last night I also made a comment about Chief Justice Roberts' failure to really come up with an ethics. And I was reminded during a conversation I had today with someone that they actually did come up with an ethics guideline that has no teeth, no report required, and no oversight on. And that apparently came out a couple of months ago. Chief Justice Roberts got together supposedly with the crew, the gang of nine. That might even be a good name for them, the Gang of Nine. Got together with them and said, hey, look, we got to come up with something. We're getting a lot of blowback, and you people have to have rules to live by. So let's make up some stuff. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to be digging for that. That's another project I'm going to start tonight. We'll work into it maybe into tomorrow, see what we can do for you, get that out to you for Monday. But there's no oversight and no, shall we say, accountability and punishment for anything like that. Again, I'm going to remind you, like I did last night towards the end of my podcast last night, the way you get rid of a crooked, corrupt, immoral Supreme Court justice is the same way you get rid of a president. It's through impeachment. Whether we're ever going to see that happen in this day and age, I don't know. There seems to be, an imbalance away from the law and order, although the party of law and order doesn't seem to want to follow the law and order. Only it's for thee, but not for me, So anyways, I'm going to cut it short there. I try to keep these things down so that you have, a few moments to yourself when you get done with this, and that I don't burn your brain into the ground or bore you to death one way or the other. So I'm going to do the usual request. I'm going to ask you to please subscribe, like, and share my channel if you get a chance. Talk to people. I've got a couple of new subscribers. Someone shared it out last night, and boy, am I thankful for them. Thank you very much to all my subscribers. I really do appreciate your support. I'm looking to grow this channel. So with that, it's the weekend, okay? And the holidays are all over, so it's back to normal. So I'm just going to say good night and thank you very much.